Well, welcome, Logansport High School students, on this wonderful Friday. And every once in a while, we have the opportunity to bring in alumni and speakers. You know, Logansport High School has a vast and fascinating alumni all over the world. And right here in Logansport, Indiana, we have a very fascinating alumnus. In 1983, graduate Mark Racop, and Mark's the owner of Fiber, if you didn't realize, right here. Mark is an actor, producer, director, designer, fabricator, businessman, just to name a few things. A Barry who had a passion and pursued his dreams, set goals, and obviously accomplished them. In conjunction with Mark's 15 years of building the 1966 Batmobile replicas, Mark and his fiberglass freaks will be hosting Comic-Con at the Logansport Cass County Airport tomorrow and Sunday. Students and staff, let's give a big Logansport Berry welcome to fellow Berry, Mark Racop.
What an absolute honor to be back on the LHS McHale Auditorium stage and McHale Auditorium Performing Arts Complex. This is amazing. I did several plays here in Logansport, including Around the World in 80 Days. I was the lead Phileas Fogg, so a lot of memories are flooding through as I come back onto this stage. But I am the owner of Fiberglass Freaks, and I build 1966 Batmobile replicas for a living. And yes, you heard that right. And you might wonder, that's kind of an odd profession. How in the world would somebody get into something like that? Well, I'm glad that you would think that, and Fiberglass Freaks is the name of the game. And what we're looking at is the 1966 Batman TV show. I was 2 years old back in 1967. I fell in love with the music, the action, the color, everything about the TV show, but especially with the Batmobile. It was really crazy with those double bubble windshields, those long fins. You've got all of the Bat gadgets going on there. And then, when I was 11 years old, I promised myself I was going to own a Batmobile someday. I wanted to grow up to be Batman. Does anybody else want to grow up to be a superhero? Does anybody else? Yeah, exactly. We've got a lot of hands going up. Yeah, when we grew up, we wanted to become a superhero. Well, I was no different than that. I wanted to be a superhero too, but I also wanted a Batmobile. So my father, John Racop, who is here in the audience today, he took me to Chicago to the Antique Auto Museum. I got to see my very first full-scale Batmobile. Turns out it was one of the original 4 George Barris built cars. George Barris is the customizer that made the original Batmobile. And this was the dragster. This is the one that's on drag strips all across the country, popping bat chutes, parachutes out the back of the car, shooting the flames out the back of it, making 180-degree turns and doing exhibitions. So this car was at the museum, and this cemented the dream that not only was I going to own a Batmobile someday, I was going to build it. So that was the craziness. That's what led me into building the Batmobile. So, what did we do? Well, I was in this very high school, age 17 years old, in this very auditorium, building sets, acting in plays, and I made 2 Batman fan films while I was here in high school, way before it was cool. Awesome that superheroes are welcome now, and fandom of science fiction and all of that, huh? Can we get a hand for that? I was at Ball State University. I was gearing up for my 3rd Batman fan film, and I needed the ultimate prop. I needed the Batmobile. So we thought, well, we built sets, we've made props, we've some costumes. How hard could it be to build a Batmobile? Oh my goodness. You know, 5 crazy 17-year-olds. We had no automotive experience. We had no automotive tools. We didn't even have an air compressor. We willed this car into being from nothing. We tore apart an old 1974 Monte Carlo. My father cut off the top with a torch, and we took wood paneling, and we took plywood and styrofoam, sheet metal, anything to try to get the shape about right, and then covered the whole thing with layers of fiberglass and lots and lots and lots of Bondo. Boy, did we learn how to block sand a car, because everything was done by hand. We had no machines. We had no air tools, no inline sanders, folks. Anybody that's in automotive, you know what an inline sander is? That's that long sander that does those nice long lines of sanding very easily. We didn't have any of that. It was all done by hand. It was all done by hand. So we finished the car enough to be able to shoot our 3rd Batman fan film while I was in college. It was used in countless parades. It was used in birthday parties, lots of promotions for the Batman movies and things like that. But it was never quite right. It brought lots of smiles, don't get me wrong, but it was never quite right. And I only had 4 photographs of that Batmobile in that dimly lit museum in Chicago, and I had my memory and a little itty bitty toy Batmobile. It's hard to imagine. This is pre-internet. This is 1983. We didn't have the access that you folks have. We didn't have the access to any of that stuff. And now I've got a terabyte's worth of data on the Batmobile. And now I can tell you which episode of the TV series that you go to find out how many openings are in the beacon cage, how many louvers are in the rear package tray underneath the windshield, how many flutes are on the center console. I tell you which episode to go to for each of those details, which gadget was used in which episode. Why do I know all of that? Because my father John recorded all 120 episodes of the Batman TV show on VHS videotape. Very, very low resolution. I hear some giggles in the crowd, absolutely. So I'm going through frame by frame, every single scene with the Batmobile, 30 frames a second on video, by the way, frame by frame to get the details right. So I'm taking lots and lots of notes. This is the driver's side dash top as I'm going, wonder what those triangle things are in the corner. Wonder what those lights are across the front of it. And that looks like it's a compass in the middle. And then I'm working out the dashboard. How many dash doors are there? Oh, there are 5 dash doors. Okay, so I'm starting to get the hang of it. Then I got to see the #1 car in person. And this was a very exciting time for me. I had seen replicas before that George Barris had built, but to see the actual screen-used hero car, that was incredible. Look at that hippie. Look at that long hair. Oh my gosh. The world changed with the advent of the internet, and my Batmobile research was no different. Suddenly I had hundreds of high-res photos at my fingertips. Even the mystery of what the original Batmobile was came to be $1,000 back in 1955. That's about $2.8 million today, by the way. Huge amount of money to be paid for a concept car. They only built one. There was never ever an intention of producing this car for real to be sold to people. And it already had the double bubble windshields, it already had those fins, it already had the trunk chevrons, all of that great dashboard. And all of this came in very handy because George Barris, the customizer, only had a few weeks to find a car and turn it into the Batmobile. So, if there was only one Futura, how did I get started? How did I get a Batmobile? Well, my plan of using plywood and wood paneling and styrofoam and sheet metal was not going to work to go into this professionally. So we found something on the internet, and this was really wild. You know how they say they could find anything on eBay? They mean it. They really do. There was a guy that was a fan of the 1955 Lincoln Futura. He created a replica of it. It was a sculpture. He popped molds off of that sculpture, then he let the sculpture sit out in the woods for about 12 years. The low-res pictures were deceiving, however, and we saw it in person after we bought it, and take a look at some of the damage that had happened out in the woods for 12 years. It took 3 months of repairs to this buck, this sculpture, to get it right. But slowly but surely, we started working on it, and it started to come together. And then, lo and behold, we're ready to prime the car and ready to go ahead and pop our first mold. A lot of people ask, What kind of car do you use? What's the base car? That's probably the number one question we get. Because they're expecting it to be a Cadillac, they're expecting it to be a Pontiac, or maybe a Chrysler car or something like that. But the answer is, we built 24 of them on Lincoln Town Cars, slightly modified, just a little. So we take out everything that's Lincoln Town Car, like you see on the picture behind you. We keep only the chassis, just the chassis. But now, we've built 24 using Lincoln Town Cars. Now we're using a custom-built chassis. That way we can get the wheelbase exactly right, get the track width exactly right, and we can use rack and pinion steering, disc brakes all the way around, modern suspension. It's really cool that way. Instead of using technology that's 50 or maybe even 75 years old. And the best part of all, we had been building with 460 Ford engines that were rebuilt. Now we've done a few 350 engines. Now we can use an LS3 Corvette engine, 525 horsepower, and it fits inside the Batmobile. Oh my goodness, when I drove the first time with one of those high horsepower engines, I could get in real trouble with that. But now we no longer have a Lincoln floor pan that comes with the donor car, so we had to construct our own floor pan. We made a mold of it, and that's what you see here, the orange. It really doesn't come through in the color. That's interesting with the projection. The molds are very important when doing fiberglass work. They're a negative version of everything that is the positive that comes out. Here's $5,000 worth of fiberglass materials, enough to do about 2 Batmobiles. So it gives you kind of an idea just on the expenses you think are important when in school, when building a Batmobile and doing a Batmobile business. You would think some of them are obvious, like art. Art would be obvious because there's a lot of art that goes into a Batmobile. Automotive naturally is very important because of everything that's going into it from a mechanical standpoint, electrical, body work, things like that. You ever think about chemistry becoming important in building a Batmobile? Well, what's the material? It's fiberglass, isn't it? Fiberglass is a chemical reaction. You're taking a syrupy-like substance, resin, you're putting a hardener into it. If you put too much hardener into it, it's too brittle. If you put too little into it, it doesn't mix right. So it's really important that you're using your knowledge from chemistry about mixing things properly and using the exact correct amounts of percentages to do those kinds of things. Mathematics becomes very important when you're working on welding together pipes at certain angles. You want to make sure those angles are absolutely correct so you don't have to do a lot of grinding afterward or a lot of adding of metal. How about grammar? You think English is important to knowing about the business? Guess what? It's important in any business. Who is going to write your business plan? Who's going to have more passion for your business than you? If you are planning to do your own business, you need to study anything and everything. You need to get your hands deep into every single subject you possibly can and learn the most that you can. You never know when you're going to use it. I never thought I'd be using algebra, and I'm sitting there going, oh boy, here I am, I'm looking at a scale photograph, and I'm trying to up-res the size, right, to be able to go full scale with it. I'm saying, oh yeah, I got to do this, and I do that, and I do this, and then, oh, that's right, I multiply, and then I divide, and then I can get the number. Hey, I actually used it. Oh, man. But, you know, these things are very valuable for us. So after using that Futura body, cast from the Futura mold, we modified the Futura into the Batmobile using those high-res pictures I took of the #1 car when I saw it in Indianapolis. And eventually, we ended up with a mold of the Batmobile now, a really good mold. So here are the parts after they've been waxed and gel-coated. We call it waxing, but it's a mold release PVA. And then we fiberglass those sections, and we put them together, and then we pop those mold pieces off, and what you see afterward is a beautiful fiberglass body that's ready to be mounted. Now there's some fiberglass flashing that'll need to be trimmed off, and we do that. And here's the floor pan, just getting ready, and here we go. Lowering the Batmobile body onto the chassis, getting ready to mount the two together. And yes, it is just as difficult as you can possibly imagine, taking a 700-pound car body and elevating it that high and bringing it back down. So over time, we'll start drilling out the holes for the triple rocket tubes right in front of the trunk. Those shot fireworks on the TV show. There are a couple of air conditioning vents that were on the rear package tray. The Futura was one of the first cars that had air conditioning. So how wild is that? The Futura was way ahead of its time. Remember that drawing I did from watching the TV show, watching the VHS tapes? Here we go. Those are the turn indicator lights. You have park, reverse, neutral, drive, and low one lights being installed. Rocket exhaust tube, and yes, the flamethrower does work on our Batmobiles. Lots and lots and lots of block sanding. More block sanding than you can possibly imagine. We go over the car about 8 times, every square inch. The car is 18 feet 10 inches long, almost 7 feet wide. Here's the dashboard for the Batmobile, very unique with those 5 roll-top sections. Here's some of the wiring being started. We have an air conditioner going into this particular car, MSD ignition or different ignition systems being installed. Here's some of the wiring if you can see it. What do you think of that, guys and gals? Anybody that's interested in automotive or interested in wiring, it is a lot to keep track of. So here the car is very close to, it's been block sanded, it's been body work. We do a light skim coat over the whole car body of Bondo, and then we're ready to prime, and here we go. See how slick the car is starting to get by this point? Then we paint the striping first, and then we mask off the stripes. It takes about 6 hours to mask off the stripes. Then we paint black. Then we unmask it, fix any stripe to black problem, red to black or black to red. Kind of nice having berry colors, isn't it? And there we go. And then we clear coat the car. We do 4 coats of clear, then we wet sand with 600, then do another 4 coats of clear. Then we wet sand with 1,000, 1,200, 1,500, 2,000, and then 3,000 grit before bringing out the electric buffer. And that's how you get a shine that looks absolutely gorgeous. That's not good enough for us. We want to be able to see the vehicles that are a block away down the street. That's our target. So here's one of our cars out on the parking lot, out actually here at LHS. We were doing a photo shoot with Rick Voorhees, and this one is our 21st car, if I remember right. And one of the cool times was when the Hoosier Heartland opened. They invited me to be one of the vehicles out on the Hoosier Heartland. So that was a lot of fun. Anytime you're driving the Batmobile, it's absolutely fun. It's crazy. All kinds of wonderful things like that. Taking lots of pictures, lots of video. It's an absolute blast. I was in Chicago on the Dan Ryan. One of my bucket list items was to drive through downtown Chicago, and I got to do that. And people were opening up their van doors to lean out to take pictures. I'm like, no, please, get back in. I'll slow down a little. It's okay. I taught Matt Lauer and Al Roker how to drive the Batmobile in in New York for the Today Show. That was a lot of fun. And then 3 days later, they had me back out to be on Good Morning America. You never know who you're going to meet, which celebrities are going to be involved, and things like that. So they brought Bat Kid from San Francisco, the kid that beat leukemia, and he wanted to be Batman for the day. Well, they brought him to the real Gotham City, to New York, and they had him, he was going to rescue Pitbull. I thought, oh, this is going to be a really nice story about rescuing a dog. This is going to be a great little bit of business. And this nice gentleman steps out after the shooting was done of that particular segment. And he says, oh, that's a beautiful car. So thank you very much, sir. That's very kind of you. He said, yeah, I was just on Letterman. I can probably get you on the show. So that would be terrific. My name's Mark Racop, and nice to meet you. And he said, I'm Pitbull. I went, oh, well, hi. It's great to meet you. Pitbull, the singer. And he was hosting the Emmys 3 weeks later. So you never know who you're going to meet. At science fiction conventions, comic book conventions, the celebrities come rushing up to the car going, I'm such a huge fan. I go, I'm a huge fan of yours. It's so much fun. It really is. So some of the gadgets on the car actually work. Everything back in the day, in 1966, it was all science fiction. Ford is real today. We have GPS, satellite radio, DVD player. We have a rear view camera. We have the detectoscope up on Robin's dash, what we call the Robin the Boy hostage finder. And did you know Batman is the world's first Wi-Fi hotspot? Yeah, I know. What? Exactly. Wi-Fi hotspot. They didn't call it Wi-Fi back in '66, of course, but Batman had the first connection remotely from another computer. using radio. How cool is that? Batman was so far ahead of his time. The imagination of those writers and directors, they were doing an amazing job. So everybody talks about the bubble windshields, of course, but there are a lot of other features in the car that are exciting. On the trunk lid, they had to cheat. They'd use wires and use holes drilled through the floor pan with stagehands pulling on it to make it automatically rise when Batman needed the bat jets to be able to get an elevator up to the top floor. Well, we can do it for real using electric actuators. We hit a switch and the hood and the trunk both come open. The beacon light, of course, works. Even the flamethrower at the back, using a propane tank in the trunk, hidden switches underneath the dashboard. How about the bat phone? The blinking, beeping Bluetooth Batmobile bat phone. We have conquered it, and we have it working. We're now doing 3D printing of the bat phone. And how awesome is that? It's so neat that the technology of today is allowing us to do the imagination of 1966. We send out our parts to a place in Pennsylvania to be chromed. They can actually chrome for real pieces like these door sweeps and the dash edging and things like that. Here's our steering wheel. This is really cool. This is a little bit beyond the imagination of what they thought of in 1955 when designing the Futura. But this is what we're doing today, and this gives you every single gauge that you would possibly need when driving the car. And it's all right there at your fingertips to be able to see very easily. The switches, you probably can't see it on the projection. Hanging off of the steering wheel, there are 2 pods that have turn signal switches. So we think it's cool, right? That we've got all these buttons on our steering wheels now, and we think, oh, this is all modern. It's not modern. They thought of this in 1955. How cool is that? Here we have the center console, where we have the blue triangle knobs that were never used on the TV show. The rear one, we turn on the interior light, and the front one turns on a 5-light flasher that's on the dash top. Our seats are made out of leather, and they're custom made with chrome seat buckets that are also custom made. And it is so much fun to watch people's reactions when they sit in the car for the very first time. The grin from ear to ear, the stories that they tell about when they were young, when they were watching Batman for the first time. And they say, this takes me back to that time. And it's really important for them, and important for anybody of all ages. And that's one of the things I found very exciting, is that people, even if people have never seen the Batman TV show, for whatever reason, they still get the car. And I find that pretty cool. Our windshields come from an airplane canopy manufacturer over in Ohio that does a really, really nice job for us. So here's one of our cars. We have air ride suspension with 3 different presets. So you hit a button and it drops the car low for show. Button 2 is a good drive height. Button 3 is a good height to be able to go inside and outside of conventional halls or into trailers and things like that to be able to haul the car. And an important question people always ask, has anybody from the cast seen one of your cars? And the answer is yes. Adam West. The Adam West. You probably remember him more as the mayor of Quahog in Family Guy than you do from Batman, but I remember him from Batman, of course, and from Family Guy. Adam West, he's a fantastic, or was a fantastic man. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. Here he is looking at our 10th car in this photo. He asked to see the engine because he had heard that the stories about it. So we opened up with the electric actuators, and his eyes widened as he realized that it was electrically operated. And the engine in it was a Ford 460 bored out to a 514 stroker, had 702 horsepower. So Adam says, how many horsepower was that again? 702, Adam, that's great. The car that I had was a piece of junk. And then he continued to compliment our car, and what a treat it was to have that from him. Burt Ward was at another convention walking around saying, well, that never worked on our car, and that never worked. That was always broken down, and you actually got that to work? That is so cool. And we just had an absolute blast as well. But nothing would beat the time. Nothing beat the time, though, when I got to take a Purple Heart vet for a ride in the Batmobile. He arrived home, it was about 3 or 4 in the morning, and he didn't have anybody there except his family to meet him. So So no big fanfare or anything. This guy had 7 operations to fix his torso because he'd been in an IED blast, and he was in terrible pain. It was great to see his reaction to the car, but more importantly, it was great to see the reaction of those that supported him in his efforts as we drove through town. And it truly was one of the most satisfying moments of my life. You remember when I said that I wanted to be Batman, I wanted to be a superhero, right, while driving the car? I got to drive through red lights for the first time in the Batmobile. And my goodness, police escort, police in front, police behind, and I'm in the Batmobile. I was that 2-year-old kid getting to drive my car, the Batmobile, down the street. But there's even more. There's even more. As crazy as that is, I get a phone call. Oh yeah, this is Doug Jackson. I said, the Doug Jackson, the owner of the number 4 Batmobile? Well, sir, you know your stuff. I said, well, thank you. Well, what can I do for you? He had driven over rough railroad tracks. The rear windshields had snapped off the car, landed points down, and shattered. Can I help him? I said, well, I think so. So I go out to Las Vegas where he lives. He's in Henderson, one of the suburbs. And he starts outlining all the plans for the car. He's going to have to take it to one shop to do electrical, another to do the windshield, another to do the body work, and possibly even another to do the paint. And it'll be 2 years of restoration, and he'll have to supervise every single moment of it. I said, Doug, I've talked with my staff. We would be honored and thrilled to restore the car for you. Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. That'd be fantastic. You guys already built Batmobiles, so that's terrific. And you have a personal connection to this Batmobile. And the best part is, I don't have to supervise it. You guys can do it all. I got to restore the number 4 Batmobile, the one that cemented the dream that I was going to build my very first car. I got to restore it. I drove the number 4 Batmobile here in Logansport, down Burlington Avenue. I drove the car I saw in Chicago when I was 11 years old. Everything came full circle. And you want to talk about amazement. You want to talk about fun. Oh my goodness. And here we are, 15 years after building our first professional car, and 35 years after building my first Batmobile. We are going to be at the Logansport Airport this weekend with BatCon, where we have our beautiful show car here. You can sit in the car for photos. We have a Bat cycle coming in, we have a Bat boat coming in, and then we have the original spring-used Batcopter. Will all be there. I've got some pictures here for you. So this is what the Batcopter looked like, or excuse me, the Bat cycle. Next up is the Bat boat, and then the Batcopter. So it is a ton of fun, and he is selling Batcopter rides, by the way. They're a little bit salty, but it's $100 per person, $75 for kids. So keep that in mind. I know it's a little bit, but they are. He can take 2 passengers at a time. And then here's a top view of one of our Batmobiles. Our team, it really is. It takes everybody involved to be able to build the Batmobiles at our shop, and I want to give a big hand. Let's give a big hand. They're back behind the screen. I don't know if that's they're a little shy, so I don't think they'll be coming out. But really, it takes every single person, from the person ordering the parts all the way through the person that's cleaning the bathrooms, and every single job is important to building the Batmobile. I'm the face of the company, I'm the owner of the company, but it takes an entire team of people to do it. And there's not a single person that's more important than somebody else in the company. And that's what we have to keep in mind as you're moving forward in whatever your endeavor is. And I want to encourage you, whatever your dreams are, don't give them up. Hang on to them. I can tell you from personal experience, I had no automotive experience, no automotive tools, and yet I built my Batmobile. They told me I couldn't build one. If you listen to people, you'll have 1,001 people say, you can't do that. You don't have enough experience. You don't have the money. You don't have the time. I'm telling you, you can do it. You can fulfill your dreams if you have enough willpower. But you must have that willpower. You must get over those obstacles. Because if you let one of those obstacles get in your way, it will. If you let an obstacle get, I'm living proof to say that it can. I had people say that I couldn't build a Batmobile. We're on number 27. We're on number 27. So I hope that this has given you some encouragement for your own passion, your own dreams, and where you are headed in your life. And I hope that it's given you a little glimpse into what we do at Fiberglass Freaks. So I don't know if there's any way to do any Q&A or where we are time-wise.
Yeah, we're okay.
We're
How much does it cost to sell one of those, or for someone to buy one of those?
more than a bit, but not as much as a bunch. They're about $125,000 for the base car, and then the top of the line is $250,000.
And Mark,
So
Mark, do you have issues with people wanting to buy the car?
Oh, I've got a backlog. I've got 176 potential customers, and I've got 6 cars that are in the works right now, so no problem at all. Yes, we have a question. Well, we hit the back shrink ring, and no, there's a dock back here. We did a hairpin turn to get it in, so it's a little tough, but we made it. Other questions? Yes. You know, here's one of the questions people ask me all the time is, what if it rains? What happens with the Batmobile? You know, in Gotham City, it never rained. So, but here in Logansport, it did, and I was driving my first Batmobile out to the airport in the rain this morning. But at highway speeds, most of the rain goes right over the car, and it's not a problem. I hardly got wet at all. The car got wet, but I didn't get wet. So we have a question back here. Yes. The first one took about, how much time do I have, by the way? I'm so sorry. And there was filmmaking, right? I got a scholarship award out, but we are working on a science fiction comedy, and I just did 17 documentaries on the 50th anniversary of Gen Con, the big gaming convention in Indianapolis. So that's what I do in my spare time. Yes, we have a question here. But come to the convention, I'll see what I can do for you. Did we have a question here? If I could grab it, okay. No, I'm going to say no on that in here at the moment. Yes. I'm so sorry.
Has your family been supportive?
Very.
In making?
Oh, goodness. I met my wife because of the Batmobile. Yeah. Mutual friend dropped by to check out what his crazy buddy was doing. So I see this hot blonde in the doorway. I'm like, oh boy, I gotta work fast. What am I gonna do? I could use some help working on the car. That was my pickup line, and it worked. Next.
Okay, hold on. Drew up there top.
Yes.
Can you honk the horn?
There's tones on it, which is a programmable one, and we have Batman for insurance purposes. Any other questions? Yes. I have a beautiful, loving wife. I'm sorry? It's your own personal willpower. Your timeline, what you think is your timeline, you might have to wait until you're out of your parents' household to be able to pursue that dream, but please do. Yes, sir. Yes, today until midnight, if you pre-order at fiberglassfreaks.com, it's $10 for adults, $5 for kids, not students, $5 for kids, 12 and under. And then if you pay at the door, it's 12 and 6. So not too bad. That'll get you in the door, and you can check out all the vendors that are going to be there, selling lots of comic books and collectibles and things like that. We're going to have 15 costumes, screen-accurate replica costumes that will be there as well. So a lot of cool stuff to see.
One more question down here, Nellie.
One more question.
Nellie?
What's the most difficult element of it to build?
All of it.
the most difficult element of the car. Really, it's every single part of it. There's almost nothing you can buy off the only is the only guy in the whole world to license to build a Batmobile, and this is the only vehicle that they have licensed. I've asked 3 times about licensing other vehicles, including the 89, including the Cyclone and the Batboat, and they've just flat out said no explanation at all. My opinion, I've been licensed for 8 years. My opinion is this is probably the only car that they're ever going to license for public purchase. So just a thought. But those other vehicles are cool and it's really neat. Thank you so much for your
Hey,
attention.
yeah. Big round of applause. Let me get you head back to the